Hey everyone, David Wright here, host of the Disruptive Innovators podcast, coming to you live from CCW in Las Vegas, where we've been talking to some of the sharpest minds in customer experience. This stretch of content is brought to you by Sonus, the real-time speech AI platform that's tearing down communication barriers, cutting through noise, and closing language gaps so that every conversation comes through exactly the way it was meant to be heard. They're doing genuinely cool work in the space, so do yourself a favor and pay attention. And Authentics, the conversation intelligence platform built specifically for healthcare, taking millions of patient and customer interactions and turning them into insights that actually move the needle on experience and operations. If you care about understanding what your patients are really telling you, these are the folks to watch, and we hope you enjoy the content. Good morning, friends. David Wright here, and I'm your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast, coming to you live from CCW in Las Vegas, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by my friend Jason Frame. Jason, pleasure to have you.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, long time coming. So glad we got it together.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'm glad you're in town, and we love having people come to Vegas.
Absolutely. Quickly want to shout out our sponsors for today, Sonus, the real-time speech and AI platform that removes communication barriers, eliminates noise, and closes language gaps, ensuring every global conversation is heard exactly the way it was meant to be. And Authentics, the AI-powered conversation intelligence platform purpose-built for healthcare, turning millions of patient and customer interactions into actual insights that improve experience and operations.
So sounds interesting.
There you go. That's I think they like to hear that. So, Jason, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your current role, and maybe the kind of customer experiences your organization tends to manage.
Yeah, definitely. So again, my name is Jason Frame. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Southern Nevada Health District. We're the local public health agency here in Vegas. So we're the ones who make sure that the restaurants are clean and that they know what they're doing. They're taking care of you, so you're not going to get foodborne illness when you come to Vegas. You know, we have 2.3 million residents and about 50 million visitors a year. So we take that very seriously.
Yeah.
One of the other big things we do, if you remember back a couple years ago with COVID, we did everything with that. We were the ones who did the contact tracing, the testing, the vaccinations. We have a public health lab that would actually do and process the tests. So that was a very big thing for us. And thankfully, we're over that. That was a rough time for us, but it was also kind of a lot of fun. Other than that, we're also a federally qualified healthcare center. So we do primary care and behavioral health here in the Valley. And we're like that safety net organization. We're the ones that if people can't go to a doctor, a lot of them are uninsured. A lot of them are undocumented. They come to us, and we're able to treat them.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's when I look at globally, you know, there's a comment I heard yesterday that there was only one country in the World Cup that didn't have universal health care.
Yeah.
Right. And
we're the host.
Right. And listen, I mean, I think there's something to be said for the U.S. healthcare system. I think there's a lot of things that we do really well. I think like federally qualified is almost the closest thing I see to universal healthcare, because you guys make sure that everyone gets the care they need, which I really appreciate.
Pretty much. And our goal is to help them out before they have to go to an emergency room.
Right.
Because some people, they go there for their general health care, and that's the most expensive health care you can have. Right. And that hurts the whole system, because if you have people in there that should be taken care of by other places, when a real emergency comes in, it causes problems.
Right.
So we know that, you know, our patient mix is not very great, but we understand that that's what we do. And we just take care of those people.
Right. So we're here in Vegas. Obviously, we have CCW going on. Jason, I know we were talking earlier, you've been here, I think, at least once before, but what brings you to CCW this year?
Definitely. I love CCW. It's a great way for me to really fully immerse myself in the CX experience. I think a lot of CIOs, especially I'm in public sector and healthcare, are not ingrained in that. They're not going deep into the CX stuff.
Yeah.
They're so focused on security, focused on infrastructure, you know, focused on tech debt and all those other things. That customer experience, they do that to the other people.
Right.
But in our agency, I'm the one who's championing that out because I see the value of experience, be it patient experience, employee experience, customer experience. One time I was giving a talk and I said, just focus on the X. It doesn't matter what the ones in front of C, P, whatever. Focus on the experience, because when you're doing that and you use experience to guide all of your decisions, it makes your budgeting more easy. It makes everything else flow together.
Right.
You focus on what you want to get out of it, and then you build your tools to get there.
I love that. I mean, it's really encouraging to me that you as a, IT and business leader within the organization are focused on that. I think to your point, a lot of executives don't care to, learn how the sausage is made, really, right? Like you said, they have people for it, and there's a mild concern with it, but I think that, there's so much promise with the advent of AI and what we can see from an ROI standpoint, both for the patient as well as for our internal customers. I think it's great that you're
Yeah, I think 10 years ago, that's more acceptable.
right.
But now the way CX has moved, and with the AI especially, you need that tech leader in charge, because you need to make sure that you're going to put those right guardrails in place. And make sure that we secure our data and we're protecting our patients' privacy, but also at the same time improving their experience.
Right.
If you're just a marketing person, that's not what you're thinking about. When you're
Right.
saying, how can we do these things better? You kind of skip out on those other parts.
That makes sense. Yeah, everything from I've been hearing a lot more about like governance lately, AI governance and otherwise. Like you mentioned the security factor. So that makes perfect sense to me. Here's one thing I love asking. What's the one thing you think every CX leader should be paying attention to right now that either isn't getting enough airtime or you just would recommend that people, key into?
To me, it's really about privacy. Being in healthcare, I think about that a lot, but everything that we do, you start to see, like CCPA and the GDPR, you want to make sure that you're keeping that privacy and you're not violating those, because that's going to turn your patients away. And that's going to give them a worse experience if their privacy gets violated because of something.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we're all focusing on that, understanding, what's driving this, but also knowing that we got to make sure we're taking our patients or our customers' data and keeping the sensitive data sensitive and not letting it get out.
Yeah. Which is something that I think globally we've struggled with all these bad actors out there. But we were talking about the UK before the shoot, and yeah, GDPR, huge thing.
Yep.
We've seen the UK take a bit more of a tentative approach with AI, and because of those reasons.
Yeah, I was reading something yesterday with the NHS slowing down all their AI, especially the ambient AI listening stuff. They're having a lot of problems with it right now.
Yeah, yeah. And it's understandable. I think that the concern for patient data and privacy is, it's paramount. So
Yep.
there's something to be said for it. I think it's there's two sides to every coin, I suppose.
Yeah, and with me living in the public sector and the healthcare space, that's more apparent to me.
Right.
If you're, the casino space, it's a little bit different. Where they're all about, hey, how can we make as much money from people as we can, and let's use the data to get that.
Right.
It's just a different mindset. So really, it depends on what your company does, but I think there's still that value of that privacy, because I don't know how many you have, but I know I've received many of those letters. Hey, your data has been breached.
Right.
We'll give you 1 year of this. I probably have like 15 or 20 of those right now.
Yeah.
And that really ruins that experience.
It's true.
And a little bit after the fact, but it makes you start to question it.
I think that people would be shocked to learn, if they don't know already, that pretty much everyone's data is somewhere on the dark web.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like everyone. It's unfortunate reality, but it's true. And it's funny what you said about like data and like casinos, or because lately, we've been heads down pretty much since COVID in healthcare. There's just a lot of work to do.
Yep.
A lot of opportunity. So we were really just totally focused on healthcare. In the last year or so, we've been doubling back with some of the other industries that we served 5-10 years ago, building out like older, like intent-based models for NLU and automation. And now like technology's evolved so rapidly in the last year or two that even those industries are needing to double back on AI and all that. But you go work with them, and you're used to like working in healthcare where like you got to be like HIPAA and GDPR and data, and then they're just like pimping the data to anything they could do to turn a buck. And I get it. Of course, right?
I had a friend who worked analytics. I'm not going to say what company that they were at, but they were at one of the major casino companies, gaming companies, and their job as the analytics department is once someone booked a room at their hotel, they were able to tell about how much they would spend over the course of that visit. And if it wasn't high enough, people would show up to check in and say, oh, you know what, we're all booked up, but we booked you a nice suite at one of these other hotels because they knew they weren't going to make enough from them. They weren't enough revenue coming in. They put them into one of their smaller hotels in their same system where that wasn't as high of a level that they needed.
Wow.
And I was kind of, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But that was fully intense. That was right before COVID hit. But I know that they're back doing that right now.
That's wild. So Jason, closer to home, what would be, one of the initiatives or projects that's taking up most of your headspace, either for the latter part of this year or early 2027?
Yeah. So on the CX side, really for us, we have a small contact center in our clinic. That one is running okay. But what we do, being the government agency, we have one person answering the phone at the front desk. And we're getting tons of calls. She's doing a great job. She's answering 55% of those calls.
Wow.
But that's a lot of calls that are being missed and going to a traditional IVR. So we've been looking at different companies doing some demos, and we're looking here at CCW this week to find, we're trying to find a good partner that can help basically answer all those calls using AI. We did some analysis of what the calls coming in are, and most of them are just general questions about how, what our services are, how can we get a health card, how can we get a food restaurant permit, different things like that a bot could easily answer.
Right.
Or say, well, all the information is here on our website. I can send you a link to it, by email or by text. And we're doing a multimodal and then also, of course, multilingual, because a lot of the patients we serve and the people we serve don't speak English as their first language.
Yeah.
And so we're very conscious of that and understanding that we need to make sure that those are in place because, being a public sector, we need to make sure that we can serve everyone equally.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the big one that we're pushing through this year. We're starting with one small part of our agency to do those and then rolling it out larger and larger. And then ultimately, I want to get to the point where we're doing call outs to our patients.
Yeah.
Hey, you got a reminder, 3 days from now, you got your appointment. If you're not able to make that, let me help you rebook right now. Because we know, being that safety net organization, if someone doesn't show up, the chance of us getting a hold of them to rebook is very slim.
Yeah.
And so if we're able to call out and do it right then and help them right while they're on the phone, it's going to increase those visit rates.
100%. Yeah. No, that's super helpful. So a couple last questions for you, Jason. First would be, I always like to ask, if you could go back 5, 10, 15 years in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I thought about this sometimes. There's the funny one is like, if I was going back 15 years, I say, buy Bitcoin, never sell it. That would be a good one.
That is a good one.
I'd be retired by now and just, be hanging out with Elon. But to me, it'd be take more risks. Coming out when I was younger, I was very risk averse coming out of school. I wanted to make sure I did everything right. I probably missed more opportunities that I could have had. I know there's one that I had. This is dating myself, but back in the early 90s, we were in college. I went here to UNLV, and we were in the dorms. And when a buddy of mine, we were working together on building web pages. This is before Netscape even became a thing. This is how old it was. And so we're playing around with it. And we built one. We're like, made it look like a hotel and a booking page. And then we're like, no one's going to go online and book a hotel. If we'd have taken a risk and just played that out, it could have changed a lot of things.
Wow.
So we kind of shot the ideas down too early. So I tell myself, follow through on some of those things and just see where it might go.
Yeah. And I think that is great advice for I think anyone who's, on the edge of do I take that risk,
Yep.
And it's for me, before becoming an entrepreneur, it's there's fear there for me. I was like, well, am I gonna, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna be able to make it? All of it.
Yeah, I heard someone say, just be willing to say yes, a little bit more often.
Right. And then the last question I'd have for you, Jason, is just any actionable advice you might look to leave the listeners or your peers here at CCW with as one of the, CIOs that's here, right? Which I think there's something to be said for that.
Yep. Take it all in. There's so much to be learned, from the sessions, the sessions are great, but then getting out on the floor and seeing what people are doing and interacting with the people, I think that's where you're going to learn a little bit more.
Sure.
Because they can only go so deep in a session. And then if you're a younger leader and you wanting to get more into leadership, I'd say ask, take that time to talk to your boss, say, you know what, I want to move up. What does that take? And then If you have a good leader above you, they're going to help you and they're going to mentor you and get you to the right place. If you don't, and they don't want to do that, then you probably might not be in the right place. Go look for something else.
That's great advice. I mean, I think that just being willing to ask the question, it seems such a simple piece of advice, but that is something that I got from some of the leaders that I appreciate early on. Served me incredibly well over the years. So
I had that happen in this last role. And a few years ago, I interviewed for a role. It was a step up from where I was at. Didn't get it. They brought in a person with 30 years more experience than I had doing that type of stuff. And it's basically second in charge. And he came in and my first one-on-one with him, he ended up being my boss. My first one-on-one with him, I said, you probably heard that I interviewed. He's like, yeah. And I said, this is what HR told me. I didn't have any experience in this and this and this. I go, so your job's to give me that experience. And he's like, wow, okay. And so he started putting me in kind of slowly into the different areas to help me get that experience.
That's awesome. Jason, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Definitely. Thanks for coming to Vegas. We love having the tourists here.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next bit. Good morning, friends. David Wright here, and I'm your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast, coming to you live from CCW in Las Vegas. And I am lucky enough this morning to be joined by Aaron Johnson. Aaron, pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making the schlep from the Caesars Forum.
All good.
Before we get into anything, I just want to shout out our sponsors. Sonus is the real-time speech AI platform that removes communication barriers, eliminates noise, and closes language gaps, ensuring every global conversation is heard exactly the way it was meant to be. And Authentics, which is an AI-powered conversation intelligence platform, purpose-built for healthcare, as it happens, turning millions of patient and customer interactions into actionable insights that improve experience and operations. So Aaron, to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the customer experience your organization manages?
Sure. So my name is Aaron Johnson. I'm the Interim Chief Marketing Officer for Penn Medicine. We're a 7-hospital health system in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So my organization includes traditional marketing and public relations, as well as an access and customer experience component. So I have a leadership role in our contact center function, which is, those are the folks that you call and you're scheduling appointments, you're seeking to speak with your doctor, all of those types of transactions. So the way I look at it is I'm kind of responsible for generating demand, but also seeing that demand throughput to the actual scheduling of appointments.
Sure. That's a really eloquent way to summarize that. And what brings you to CCW this year?
Yeah, so this is my third CCW event.
Oh.
So I was out here in Vegas last year, and I was in Orlando this winter.
Sure.
So this is my third. So I was fortunate to be asked to speak on a panel this morning around automation and AI. So I was out there to participate in that. But when I come out here as a person whose background is in marketing and communications, but who over the past 10 years has sort of focused my career on CX, UX, this is really where I learn a lot. And, heavily technology focused. I'm not a technologist. I've never written a single line of code. So coming to these events gives me an opportunity to kind of understand what's happening in the market and how it might apply to the work that I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great that you with both a marketing, operational background, getting that technology kind of immersion, and then understanding how you can leverage it to address the strategic goals you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Here's one thing I love asking: What's one thing you think every CX leader should be paying attention to right now that maybe isn't getting enough airtime, or that you just think should be a priority?
Yeah, I think with AI in particular, what I'm observing is that there's a solution first mindset that's kind of creeping in.
Yeah.
And so what I would urge people to do is just kind of stick to the fundamentals of what we do. So start with your user, understand what their problem is, be as precise as you can with defining that problem, and then look at all solutions, including agentic AI and other AI solutions, automation as a component, but stay focused on the customer journey and not focused on implementation of AI per se. I think it's easier said than done because a lot of organizations, there's just pressure. We need to implement AI. We need to be upfront. So I think it's good to be aggressive and it's good to be curious because the opportunities are there. So I would say, look at the new school opportunities, but stick with your old school fundamentals at the same time.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the old school fundamentals that are at the base of a holistic strategy, right? Where I'm going with this is one thing that I've seen is that in addition to it just being solution first, we've also noticed that sometimes at the expense of not having conversations across the organization or kind of looping in different concepts or use cases between access and rev cycle, like you can end up with these basically point solutions that serve a given function. Whereas if I would have had the conversation across the organization, I may have learned that one solution may have sufficed for both use cases.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's just what you said just reminds me is that, and we'll talk about this sometimes, is think big, start small, right? So you can't boil the ocean as a health system, obviously. And so you want to start with something that's consumable or achievable, but at the same time, I don't want to do that at the expense of not, thinking holistically.
Yeah. I think, when you look at the disposition of our calls, for example,
Right.
you realize that there are big chunks of calls that are for very rote things. So in our world, there are about 5% of calls are for people just calling to confirm their appointment.
Sure.
And so that makes you think, if you get back to the problem definition, it's like, well, why did they feel the need to call in the first place? Could we utilize our marketing automation tool to send them a reminder? Does it need to be a text reminder instead of an email reminder? Are we exhausting all of those opportunities? But then if they do call, we're working on simple use cases that will allow them to confirm the details of their appointment, or even just confirm that they in fact have an appointment.
Right.
Maybe they're nervous that somehow the appointment that they're waiting for got lost in the system. So I think part of it is, again, this goes back to discipline, identifying what are your low risk use cases that have the simplest implementation of a solution and the highest impact and highest leverage for that solution. So that's a pretty easy one. And then you develop a fitness and you develop an expertise for tackling your higher complexity interactions later.
Yeah. Well, and there's a few things that you mentioned there that I really appreciate. One is, you're arriving at what those use cases are and what those opportunities may be based on the data.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the data, you're looking at what the customers are calling about, what the customers are saying, and you're backing into what that might be.
Correct.
And in addition to that, what I heard you where I heard you going with that was also like, okay, we're gonna send this person a text reminder. We're understanding, what the customer intent is, what the journey is. Take it a step further, right? Like, with the resources you guys have, I imagine you might come to find that some patients prefer maybe that reminder come via, a call, maybe it's a agentic AI making a phone call,
Correct.
Maybe it's an SMS reminder, right? So how are we moving towards addressing the patient's needs prior to them needing to reach out via the channel they want, timing they want, all that.
Yeah. And those are conceptually simple to understand, practically difficult to implement.
Sure.
So again, a lot of it just goes back to, you mentioned don't boil the ocean. That takes a lot of discipline too, because, you want to do things that look cool with these new technologies in particular.
Right.
Your orientation has to be that problem solving is cool.
Yeah.
The solution, and sort of be agnostic around the solution. That's, again, easier said than done, but it's something that I try to live by myself.
It's a good credo to live by. So closer to home, and what's one of the initiatives or projects that's taking up a lot of headspace for you and or your team leading into the latter half of this year, early next year?
Penn Medicine has been embarking over the last couple of years, like a lot of health systems, on an overall total digital transformation. So that meant integrating websites onto a single cloud-based CMS platform, system-wide content strategy, sort of understanding what is the story that we're trying to tell as a system. And on the front end, and then complementing that with a back end that's structured, that's visible, that's communicating in ways that the machines can understand and remains compelling to the human beings who are visiting our site. So on the web side, we're really, grappling like a lot of like all organizations with the fact that people are getting their answers on the Gemini or ChatGPT, and their needs are satisfied without necessarily coming to our website.
Sure.
What that means is for our website, it needs to be more transactional in nature, because presumably they're coming to the website because they have a task to complete as a higher proportion of total visitors than before this whole zero-click search phenomenon really took hold. So a big kind of content strategy, web platform strategy. One thing that I will say is a strength of our team is the tight-knit collaboration between the digital strategy and the call center strategy. It's one strategy. And so operationally, we're aligned. Strategically, we're aligned.
That is unique.
Yeah, it's unique. And it's, for me, it's exciting because as a marketing leader, I'm not just there to help people make a decision to come to us vis-a-vis our competitors.
Right.
I actually want to see them through to the finish line. And a lot of times there are people who are really, really trying to get in, and they're experiencing friction or some blockage along the way. So having the analysts looking at it holistically, having our content strategists able to sort of think along those terms as well, it lets us look at a blockage and clear it, as to use a healthcare metaphor, and clear it as quickly as possible.
Sure.
So a lot of that work is very detail oriented. So there's a huge technology component, platform architecture, data architecture, but a lot of it is also integration of formerly disparate call center teams.
Sure.
And so for a lot of healthcare organizations, the acceleration of mergers and acquisitions continues.
Yep.
And so you have to grapple with the fact that we just welcomed a new hospital into our system. They're on a different telephony platform. They're on a different web platform. They have a totally different approach to things.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've really kind of done a nice job of at Penn Medicine, I think, is having an equal emphasis on the integration of teams and platforms and all of the change management and training that needs to happen with sort of foundational data and tech integrations that have, but it's a constant work in progress, and it's going too slow or it's going too fast, depending on who you ask. But we're in the thick of it, and so I'm proud to sort of be a leader amongst a really talented team of people who enjoy being part of a digital strategy that includes the whole contact center component of it.
Yeah, I mean, I love to hear it, because often I'll find that the marketing and digital experience for a health system is unfortunately sometimes maybe not an afterthought, but just like kind of exists on an island. Maybe the island's adjacent to access strategy, but like oftentimes they're very separate. And then you have IT and digital. Sometimes you have IT down here keeping the lights on, and then this digital function that's kind of like in the middle. But so often we see that it's not really cohesive, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's not anyone's fault. It's just you've had a lot of times you've had like hospitalists thrust into access roles that are just responsible for take more phone calls. We just acquired another practice. We just acquired another hospital, make it work, figure it out. And then you have the digital folks working on like their digital strategy of like merging, like you said, CMS systems or, whatever. It's a lot. So
yeah, some of it just gets down to basic business practices too, and the basic fundamentals of supply and demand.
Right.
So when you think about it from supply and demand, where demand is marketing and supply is access, there's a very intuitive and natural connection there.
Of course.
What I think happens, especially in big organizations and organizations that are getting bigger and expanding, In healthcare, the roles of people like me and our teams just have to be sort of reframed
Yeah.
in a way that lets people know that, we're a part of operations too, because we're actually building the platforms, the landing pages, the websites, the mechanisms that get the patients in.
Right.
And if we get them in because they want to come here and they've succeeded, but they don't ultimately schedule an appointment, the whole thing is messed up.
Right.
And so I think the only way you really can look at it fundamentally is that your access operation and your demand generation or marketing organization really need to, they don't have to be part of the same structural component, but
Right.
they need to be in cahoots from the get-go.
No, Aaron, that makes sense, 100%. So listen, this has been great. A couple last questions I like to ask all my guests. First would be, if you can go back 5, 10, 15 years in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Buy NVIDIA would be the one.
That was my thing. I love that. I bought some, but not enough.
Yeah, I bought some, not enough, too late.
Yes.
But not too late, but definitely not early. I think from a career standpoint,
Sure.
I kind of feel good about the path that I've had. I don't really have any regrets.
Yeah.
I think there are tactical mistakes that were made along the way, but had I gone back and told myself that don't make these mistakes, I wouldn't have come out the other side of those mistakes without any wisdom having made them. So,
Sure.
But buy NVIDIA and keep on your path.
I really appreciate that answer to the question, because it is an interesting paradigm, that question. Like I'm so grateful for the point that I'm at in my life today, and it's a product of all the pain, all the mistakes, all of it. So I don't know if I were to go back and change something, if it would have a butterfly effect in an opposite direction.
Yeah, your life could be worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, you never know.
So thank you for that thoughtful response. And then the last would be just one piece of actionable advice you might look to leave the listeners and or our colleagues here at CCW with.
Yeah, so I'll say two. So, and a lot of this goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is there's a lot of hype right now around the possibility of AI. Some of it's going to be realized and it's going to add value, and some of it won't.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just kind of stick to the fundamentals of your craft.
Sure.
And don't go solutions first. The other piece is, and this is just going to get really, really specific, and it relates to the work that I do.
Yeah.
If you're successful at implementing new solutions, whether they're high-tech solutions, low-tech solutions, focus on the top line and the bottom line. So as you're trying to reduce costs and take unnecessary costs out of the system, also calculate the revenue generation of those solutions as well.
Yes.
If you're reducing your reliance on human agents for routine things where a human connection doesn't create unique value,
Right.
then you can kind of talk about the way that you've taken unnecessary costs out of the system, and that'll please the people that you're working for and help your organization. But the more you are successful with that, the higher the quality of the human interactions that are left.
Right.
The less inquiries and calls are abandoning. So calculate your cost-cutting measures, but make sure that you're telling the full picture of the value that you're bringing, in particular the revenue that would have otherwise left your system or your company and went to a competitor. So I think just getting your story really tight around the value that you're bringing, and don't exclusively limit that value to cost cutting.
Yeah. I think some of the things that I've heard that you guys have been able to achieve with your kind of CRM, with your patient 360, with being able to really, and you kind of refer to it one way or another, like track the journey end to end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think downstream to revenue.
Yeah.
Right. Which, I mean, it's a business.
Sure.
I think I don't see it being done well all the time.
Yeah.
So I think what you just said, I think there's something to be said for that. Something to be said for some of the things you mentioned before. So anyway, kudos. I
Yeah,
mean, Aaron,
thanks.
it's such a pleasure to have you
Yeah,
on.
you as well. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on our next bit.